Yono and the Celestial Elephants is a puzzle-focused adventure game, and, well, it's freaking adorable. Just look at it. In this game, elephants are these magical, godlike protectors. A new one shows up every 1,000 years, just in time to save the world from itself. But Yono is different. He doesn't seem like one of these legendary heroes that everyone keeps talking about. While he understands his responsibility, he's still unsure about what exactly he's here to do, and even what he's capable of. Which makes sense. After all, he was born yesterday. The controls are simple. Aside from the interact button, which you use to read signs and talk to people, Yono has two moves to work with. A headbutt, which can be used to knock items off of shelves, smash pots, and it also functions as your primary attack. Then there's your trunk. You can blow air out of it to activate pinwheels, give yourself some distance in a fight, and snort up water, peanuts, and chilies to solve puzzles, complete tasks, and take out enemies. Of course, the real meat of the game comes in the form of countless block-pushing puzzles ripped straight out of a Zelda game, multicolored rising barriers included. The game wears its influences on its sleeve, and it's proud of it. Hey, wait a minute. The puzzles were pretty easy and straightforward up until the last couple of areas in the game, but that's okay. Yono is the kind of game that you want to relax to, and hardcore puzzle solving might have taken away from that vibe. As it stands, it's the perfect game to bring to bed, so I'd recommend you get it on the Switch if possible. When you're not solving block puzzles, you'll be exploring the land, getting lost in its cities, and helping NPCs by completing simple tasks like watering their flowers or making deliveries. If that sounds straightforward and basic, it's because it is. But don't cut Yono short just yet. In spite of the game's simple mechanics, it almost entirely makes up for it by being just so damn charming. Most of the characters that you meet are memorable in one way or another. It's not uncommon for NPCs to share a heartbreaking personal story about their past or their hopes and dreams, which in turn gives you greater insight into the world that they inhabit. And for a game that's this bright and colorful, the subject matter that's discussed in Yono can get surprisingly heavy. The deep-rooted politics and clashing ideologies of the game's three races comes to the forefront in many of the conversations you have near the end. The humans, Bone Whites, and Makani represent the three races and major cities that make up this world. The Bone Whites are peaceful, but they can't seem to relate to the other two. Their immortality has almost desensitized them from the pettier parts of being alive. They lack any sense of ownership, which means they don't feel greed or have selfish desires. They're entirely driven by logic, never fighting or hurting anybody. They just want to chill out and be spooky. Honestly, they're my favorite of the bunch. They're just so cool. Makani are robots that have become sentient only 100 years ago or so. In fact, one of them tells you about how they celebrate Singularity Day as a sort of Independence Day. It's the day that they finally broke free from the shackles of their human creators, and started to think for themselves. I stumbled upon this pre-Singularity Makani, and the fact that they were unable to have any sort of meaningful conversation, but instead repeated the same pre-programmed dialogue, was surprisingly unsettling. It did a really good job of emphasizing the motives that are driving these guys, and why maybe they're right not to trust the humans. When I started playing Yono, I never thought it would delve into places like these, and I certainly didn't expect to have a cartoon robot equate freedom of choice to being cursed with existential dread. This is some pretty intense stuff, and luckily it's handled pretty well thanks to excellent writing. You wouldn't think this would work. A game that's so bright and positive should theoretically clash with these serious topics of classism, oppression, and war, but somehow they almost complement each other. I like the idea that underneath that squeaky clean cartoon exterior, these are real characters that can be just as selfish and cruel as anybody in the real world. Not to mention, contrasted against that, the sweet, childlike Yono seems even more like the heroic force for good that he's supposed to be. It's a weird amalgamation, but I kind of dig it. Considering Yono was developed entirely by one person, the amount of polish and care that's put into the writing and presentation is incredible. But there are, of course, a few things here and there that I think could have been handled a bit better. On the Nintendo Switch, there's currently no Pro Controller support, which is a bummer, and hopefully it can be patched in at some point. I noticed a few typos in the dialogue here and there, and when you unlock these codecs too quickly, the text reveal animation could sometimes wig out for a bit. And I won't spoil anything here, but I'll say that after hours of building up the game's universe and the rising tensions between political powers, by the end of it all, I was left a bit disappointed. The game seems to end a few beats too early. I think it could have been fleshed out a bit more. It just felt a little rushed. Now, all of these issues are likely due to the limited resources of having one person behind the entire game, so I don't want to be too hard on it, but I think these are at least worth mentioning. And it's not like the game isn't aware of its simplicity. There's even a humorous, self-deprecating jab in there about how all Yono does is deliver stuff and push blocks. I thoroughly enjoyed playing Yono. This is a cozy little game that I loved spending time in, and it has loads of rich lore to dig into. While the ending left me wanting more, that might just be proof that what's there is pretty good already. So here's hoping for an even more ambitious sequel down the line. I'm giving Yono a 3.5 out of 5.